Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and everybody else out there, this is TV Courtroom, hosted by yours truly, Michael Cord Esquire, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. Folks, I really hope you all are registered to vote, and I really hope you all have voted if you're doing the mail-in thing, or that you will get in on time, or certainly on November 4 that you vote. So I'm going to talk more about voting toward the end of the show because that's not what we advertised today's show about. But there's an important election coming up on November 4, 2025. And in regard to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, that election will determine if the guy in the White House now will remain in the White House for as long as he wants. Forget about any upcoming presidential elections if the three Democrats seeking retention on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court lose. So, folks, keep your dial locked here for the next 60 minutes because toward the end of the show, I'm going to talk to you about those candidates. But before any of that, in terms of the hype regarding today's show, I want to talk about ATAC, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And today's show is the most enlightening, informative show that I will ever have about ATAC. I should say TV courtroom show that I will have. You might say, well, what are you talking about? I'll explain it. But let me start with the history of ATAC. And folks, please get your pens out, your pads out, your cell phones out, record this stuff, video stuff, this stuff, take notes on this stuff, because this is critically important. It's important to Black people today. It's important to Black people tomorrow. And it's certainly most important to Black people yesterday, our ancestors. And I want to be clear, it's not just Black people, it's good white people, brown people, Asian people, other people, everybody, red people. And the reason is because anytime there's a movement regarding people of color, they got to come together. They got to create alliances. They got to be allies because divided they fall, correction. Divided we fall. United we stand. So we all have to come together. Other people of color have to help us on this Black issue, and Black folks have to help other people of color. We got to help Asian folks being oppressed. We got to help red people being oppressed. We got to help brown people being oppressed. And I'm going to have shows in the future about that. I already talked to about a year or so ago about Black people supporting yellow people in connection with that whole 76 place. And we came together and we beat exploitative, brutal, inconsistent capitalism. I'll talk more about that later, but let me just focus on this Black thing right now and why white people and other oppressed people of color have to come together to fight the good fight because we have a common enemy. And that common enemy is the man in the White House, who the historical record has shown is a racist, is a fascist. And I'm not just saying this as hyperbole. I'm saying this as historical fact. We all have to come together, people of color, to fight against brutal white supremacy, personified by the guy in the White House. Having said that, folks, I know you got your pens out. I know you got your pads out. I know you got your recorders out, your videos out. So let's jump into the main purpose of today's show. The main purpose of today's show is to stop the censorship of Black history at America's historical sites. Let me repeat that. The purpose of today's show is to stop censorship of Black history at America's historical sites. And I say it that way so that people know what I'm talking about, but I got to put a little caveat there when I say Black history, because Black history is American history. So if there's censorship of Black history at America's historical sites, that's censorship of American history at America's historical sites. It starts like this: almost a quarter century ago, 23 years ago, in 2002, there was a news report indicating that the Liberty Bell Center, which back then was at Fifth and Market, was going to move westbound one block to Sixth and Market. At the time, I was doing a radio show host. I was the substitute host or the guest host whenever the great Mary Mason was not available. Big shout out to my mentor at the time, who I worked with, the great Charles Bowser, one of the greatest attorneys in American history. He was a good friend, a close friend of Mary Mason. So anytime Mary Mason couldn't be available, she talked to the great Charles Bowser. I was working at the Charles Bowser Law Center, and he would say, "Hey, Mike, can you sit in for Miss Mason?" I said, "Of course." So follow me now. So 2002, the Liberty Bell Center's got to move from Fifth and Market to Sixth and Market because it was too cramped, it was too crowded, it was too congested. So I announced that on the radio show to a primarily Black audience. And, the audience pretty much said interesting, but not really relevant. That's the first thing. The second thing is, remember, the first one was the move of the Liberty Bell Center. The second thing is that it was moving to Sixth and Market. Back in 1790, in fact, from 1790 to 1797, that site at Sixth and Market was America's first White House. Back then, it was called the President's House, the Executive Mansion, the Robert Morris Mansion, but it served in effect as America's first White House. I announced that to the predominantly Black radio audience here in Philadelphia. Again, they said interesting, but not really relevant to us. Then the third thing I announced. Now, you all got great memories, so the first thing, the move to the Liberty Bell Center. The second thing, to the location that was America's first White House. Now, the third thing is George Washington enslaved Black men, Black women, and Black children at that site. That's when that Black radio audience that I was announcing to, they were up in arms. We were up in arms. My position is that I was born and raised in Philly. I've never heard about not only slavery in Philadelphia, but slavery in Philadelphia at America's first White House. I went to the greatest school, arguably, in America, Masterman. Never heard about it. It wasn't Masterman's fault. It was that the powers that be kept this information suppressed. I went to Cheney University, the oldest HBCU in America, the first in America. Never heard about it there. Wasn't Cheney's fault. The powers that be kept this information secret. I went on to law school at Ohio State University School of Law and never heard about it there. Not their fault, because the powers that be here in Philadelphia kept this information suppressed. But eventually it leaked out. So remember, we're still talking about 2002. So a group of us got together and we were angry. I call myself the angriest Black man in America. And I got that from James Baldwin because, to paraphrase the great James Baldwin, he said, to be Black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And that made so much sense to me. How can you be Black and know about slavery and not be enraged? How can you be Black in America and know about convict leasing and not be enraged? How can you be Black in America and know about sharecropping and not be enraged? How can you be Black in America and know about Jim Crow and not be enraged? How can you be Black in America and know about the history of lynching and not be enraged? How can you be Black in America and know about gerrymandering and redlining and police brutality and mass incarceration and voter disenfranchisement? How can you be Black in America and know all that stuff and not be enraged? But James Baldwin made it clear that rage must be there, but it must not be destructive. That rage must be productive, constructive, uplifting. We need to become educated and figure out the most effective, the most strategic way of expressing that rage. So in June, actually, it was late May, early June of 2002, angry Black folks came together. We were outraged about what had happened to our ancestors right here in Philadelphia. We felt the need to avenge them, to fight for them, to tell their story. We need to avenge the ancestors, but we need to build a broad based coalition, predominantly Black, but Christians and Muslims and Jewish Black folks and atheist and agnostic and deist folks and men and women and boys and girls and straight and gay and transgender, whatever. This was a broad based coalition by, for, and of Black people, but not exclusive. I'll explain why in just a second. So we angry Black folks got together to avenge our ancestors, to build a coalition to implement that avenging. So somebody said, well, let's call it ATAC. I'm like, ATAC, ATTACK. That's not ATAC. They said, no, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. Late May, early June 2002, that's the birth of ATAC. And beginning on July 4, 2002, and every year since then, ATAC has had what we call Black Independence Day, because America on July 4 always tells their story. They talk about the greatness of their 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. What they don't tell us is that 75% of them, 41 of the 56, enslaved Black people or invested in the enslavement of Black people. 41 of 56. We had to tell that story. So on July 4, every year from 2002 up to 2024, we either have an in-person Black Independence Day, or we had at 6th and Market, or we have online, and we had an online and virtual a few times following COVID. But we always make sure that we do something on July 4 of each year since we were founded in 2002. So we fought the good fight beginning 2002, and in connection with that good fight, we were relentless, protesting and demonstrating and petitioning and just doing everything that a strategic activist should do. And we fought the good fight for 8 straight years. We relied on great historians, relied on great archaeologists, relied on great architects. We relied on great preservationists. We became a true coalition, and beyond just a Black one, because there's a white man who is the reason that we have that site at 6th and Market, the President's House / Slavery Memorial. The gentleman's name is Edward Lawler. Google him. Edward Lawler, Lawler. He was the first to figure out, one, that America's first White House was right there at 6th and Market, and two, the first to figure out the story of slavery there. So based on his research, and by the way, not just his research, but once he lit the fire, we were able to get more information to engage in the fight to avenge our ancestors. People like the great Dr. Shirley Parham, a Cheney University professor, the great Dr. Edward Robinson, arguably the greatest Renaissance man in the past 100 years in Philadelphia. This guy could do it all. And certainly still with us, the great Dr. Molefe Kete Asante. So we activists, we took that dusty old information from these historians, from those dusty old libraries, and we converted their historical information into cultural ammunition, converted their historical information into cultural ammunition. And we fought the good fight from 2002 until 2010, 8 years. And then on December 15, 2010, there was the grand opening of the first, I repeat, the first slavery memorial of its kind on federal property in the history of the United States of America. That all that I explained to you is the birth and the activism, strategic activism of ATAC, successfully engaging in battle and winning on December 15, 2010. We're thinking that it's over. We're celebrating. We got the champagne. We're just partying. Everything was good until it wasn't. Fast forward 15 years later, when the guy in the White House had his inauguration, January 2025. And on that day, he issued dozens of executive orders. And most of them were simply anti Black executive orders, opposing DEI, opposing affirmative action, opposing civil rights. So we knew what was coming. So follow me on this. We won in 2010. Everything, and by the way, I want to be clear, this is not a politically partisan argument, because when we fought the good fight, initiated in 2002, a Republican was the president, George Bush. And I'm certainly no fan of George Bush, one or two, but I got to tell you, he didn't deny American history. He let us do our thing. So a Republican basically gave it the green light or didn't get in the way in 2002. We fought the good fight for 8 years until 2010 and won. 15 years later, Republican comes into office and decides that if it's Black, it goes back. So follow me. January 2025, he issues dozens of executive orders. And in effect, they're just anti-Black stuff. That's January 2025. Fast forward 3 months to March of 2025. He issues an executive order where he says he is going to get rid of, quote, any information that inappropriately disparages Americans past and present. He's going to get rid of, quote, any information at federal historical sites, any information that, quote, inappropriately disparages Americans past and present. That's March of 2025. Fast forward 2 months to May of 2025. The guy he appointed to the Interior Department, guy by the name of Doug Burgum, targets Philadelphia for its president's house / slavery memorial at 6th and Market. You may say, well, what does the Interior Department have to do with this? Here's how it works. On the local level, we have Independence National Historical Park. That's the rangers, the folks we see walking around in Independence Mall area in Philadelphia, Independence National Historical Park. Above them, that's the National Park Service. Basically has regional authority. Then above the National Park Service is the Interior Department. Interior Department basically controls all federal land in America. So that's how Interior Department Secretary Doug Burgum comes in. And he says in May of 2025 that he's targeting Philadelphia. And there are 13 bits of information, including illustrations, on the wall at 6th Market. If you come into the President's House Slavery Memorial from the Market Street side near 6th Street, there's a large opening. You walk right into your left, there's a wall, and those walls have panels, and those panels have information, including information, for example, about the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, the dirty business of slavery, the horrors of slavery, slavery in Philadelphia. It's just a wall of information going pretty much from Market Street down toward the new Liberty Bell Center. Well, 13 items on those walls the guy in the White House has a problem with. And I mentioned specifically the Fugitive Slave Act, because if you go to that part of the wall where that panel is, it has language lifted directly from the law that George Washington signed at that location, 6th and Market, while enslaving 9 Black men, women, and children. And basically that law penalized any white person who tried to help end slavery. That's basically what it did. It nationalized the attack on abolitionists by increasing the amount of punishment they would suffer. And it wasn't just a colony thing or a state thing, it was a nationwide thing. And in that section of the wall where it talks about the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 that George Washington signed right there at 6th and Market, there's an image of black men being beaten and whipped. Well, the guy in the White House and his Interior Department secretary say, well, we don't know anything about any beatings or whippings that happened as a result of the Fugitive Slave Act. So that's an exaggeration. There's no historical documentation. And we're saying, man, come on. I mean, some things you just don't even want to respond to. You know what happened to black people during slavery. It wasn't just the loss of freedom, like when people commit crimes today, they lose their freedom. They go to prison, but they keep their name, their culture, their religion, their family. They keep all that makes them human. But under slavery, 246 years of slavery from 1619 to 1865 with the 13th Amendment, black people were kidnapped, black people were tortured, black people were raped, black people were sodomized, black people were lynched, black people were whipped and beaten. So when you see the illustration on that wall in connection with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, that wall at 6th and Market, that's no exaggeration. And white folks who agree with the president, I don't even want to call him the president, I just call him the guy in the White House. And white folks who agree with him and say, oh, this is an exaggeration, it wasn't that bad. Let's do this. Let's go back in time from 1619 to 1865. And if we go back in time with this time machine, we can go back as black people or we can go back as white people. No thinking person, no human being with a brain would go to America in a time machine from 1619 to 1865 and voluntarily do that as a black person. Why? Because they know they're going to be kidnapped and enslaved and tortured and raped and sodomized and beaten and lynched and whipped. So they know all that. The thing that the guy in the White House wants to do, he wants to censor black history. He wants to be so that kids today in 15, 20, 30 years won't know anything about the horrors of slavery. So they'll be able to say, why are these black people complaining about slavery? Slavery wasn't that bad. And even if it was 1,000 years ago. No, it wasn't. Black folks didn't get their freedom, in effect, their real freedom in 1865 with the passage of the 13th Amendment. So what? They were on the Jones plantation in 1865, and then what? 1866, they lived in Beverly Hills? Of course not. After that, there was sharecropping and convict leasing and Jim Crow and gerrymandering and redlining and voter disenfranchisement. In fact, black folks didn't really get their foot in the door slightly until 1964. 1964. So don't tell me it ended in 1865. We're talking about 100 years later, where blacks still didn't get to where they needed to be. And to this day, 2025, they're still not, because of slavery and the residue of that racist institution. And if you don't believe me, here's what I ask people. I say, hey, I'm a criminal defense attorney and I go to court trying cases every day. And let me ask you this, if you think that everything is fine, no racial problem in America, let's do this. Let's say tomorrow, 2025, you can go to court. You have to go to court tomorrow on a murder case, a robbery case, a rape case, and you have to go to that trial as a defendant. And everything else being equal, same education, same job, same neighborhood, same car, same clothing, same religion, everything's the same, but you have to choose whether you want to go as a black defendant or a white defendant in 2025. Which would you choose? Answer's obvious. Let's say you're leaving Temple University, driving up Broad Street. It's 3:00 in the morning and you're near Broad Montgomery and you're driving your car, obeying all the traffic rules, and lights and sirens from a police car are behind you, and you pull over, and the cop gets out of the police car to approach you. And as that cop gets to you, you could decide right then and there to be a black driver or a white driver. What would you choose? You choose to be the white driver. So don't tell me that race doesn't matter in America, because if it didn't matter, you'd voluntarily go to court as a defendant as a black person, or you'd voluntarily be in a car being stopped by police as a black person. Of course not. You choose in that courtroom to be a white person. You choose on that highway to be a white person in 2025. And if you say anything different, you are a liar, because that's how it goes. Having said that, let me get back to the point that we're here for, because I'm talking about the problem, what happened with the guy in the White House and what he did to try to shut things down. The last thing I told you was that in May of 2025, this year, his Interior Department Secretary Doug Burgum basically gave set forth a 120-day deadline. So that's May of 2025. 120 days from that date would have been September 17, 2025. On September 17, 2025, approximately 2 weeks ago, the President's House slash Slavery Memorial at 6th and Market could have been shut down. Just throw a big blanket over it and shut it down, lock it up. Or it could have been censored. In other words, information about the horrors of slavery could have been whited out on those panels that go from the beginning of the Slavery Memorial, President's House, to the end of it as you approach the Liberty Bell Center. Or it could have been severely edited, changed the wording. Well, despite the threat in May from the White House and from the Interior Department Secretary that on September 17, all that stuff could be erased at 6th and Market, September 17 came and went. Nothing happened. And the reason nothing happened is because folks got together. Remember, I told you about ATAC being founded 23 years ago in 2002. Well, when word came out sometime in August that the guy in the White House might shut down that site at 6th and Market, all types of folks came together. We now have an organization that's bigger than ATAC. ATAC is this black-led, black-run, black-involved activist organization. But once the guy in the White House talked about shutting down the site at 6th and Market, black, white, yellow, brown, red, rich, poor, blue collar, white collar, suburban, inner city, folks came from all over. And how did I know? Because this new group that formed, it's called President's House slash Slavery Memorial Alliance. President's House slash Slavery Memorial Alliance. It includes activists and archaeologists and architects and historians and preservationists and tour guides and elected officials and folks from the hood. I mean, a whole bunch of folks, Christian folks and Muslim folks and Jewish folks and indigenous African spirituality folks and atheist folks and agnostic folks and deist folks, all types of folks. It's an umbrella organization. ATAC is a part of it, but it's bigger than ATAC. And we all came together for the purpose of telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about American history. Correction. We came together to stop the guy in the White House from censoring the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We want folks to know that George Washington enslaved 316 Black men, women, and children at his Mount Vernon, Virginia plantation. We want people to know that George Washington took 9 of those 316 and brought them to Philadelphia, where he held them from 1790 to 1797 illegally. You say, Mike, how can you say it was illegal? Well, we know slavery was horrible, but it was legal, but not in Pennsylvania, the way George Washington tried to do it. Here's the history very quickly. And this history is important. And by the way, folks, we might possibly have a guest or two coming up soon in connection with another matter and unrelated matter. And our producer extraordinaire, Roland, will give me a heads up if these folks have been able to get away from their work. One is a prominent attorney who has some important information to share, if she's available. And if she is, we'll have her on. If not, we'll continue what we're doing right here. So what this umbrella organization has done, remember the name of it is President's House / Slavery Memorial Alliance, because it includes all types of people. Bigger than ATAC. ATAC is one component of this larger umbrella organization. And our whole purpose, our only purpose, is to stop the guy in the White House from censoring Black history at America's first White House, known as the President's House, here in Philadelphia at 6th and Market. And I mentioned to you the 316 total that he enslaved in Mount Vernon, Virginia, and I'm going to go into the 9 that he enslaved illegally here in Philadelphia. But let me just explain to you how bad this thing is from George Washington's perspective. He went from what he thought was a law skirter to an actual law breaker. Here's why. When he came in 1790, he was aware of a law called the Gradual Abolition Act of 1780. Remember, George Washington comes here in 1790 to America's first house to live for 7 years. And he's aware of the Gradual Abolition Act of 1780. And basically that act said this. It was a state law, not a federal law. It was a state law for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It basically said this: hey, if you come into Pennsylvania with enslaved human beings and you hold them for 6 consecutive months in Pennsylvania, they can petition for their freedom. That's the 1780 Gradual Abolition Act. Well, George Washington comes here 10 years later in 1790, and he says to himself, hey, what I can do is, quote unquote, rotate the slaves. Sometime around 5 months, 29 days, I can take them across state lines, take them across to New Jersey, take them back to Virginia, whatever, and then turn around and bring them right back. And that way I didn't hold them for 6 straight months, and therefore they can't petition for their freedom. So he thinks he's being slick and he's skirting the law. But he either knew or should have known about the amendment to that 1780 Pennsylvania state law. The amendment took place 8 years later. It was the amendment, the 1788 amendment to the Gradual Abolition Act. And what that 1788 amendment said is, hey, we passed this law 8 years ago, and we found out that since then people are skirting this law. They are, quote unquote, rotating the slaves. And by the way, I don't like the term slaves because my ancestors weren't slaves. They were human beings who simply were enslaved. More about that later if we have time. So George Washington, under the 1788 amendment, because here's what the amendment said. It said, we are hearing and we're finding out that people are coming into Pennsylvania with enslaved human beings, and then they're rotating them around 5 months, 29 days, and bringing them back to skirt the law of 1780. Well, damn it, it's now 1788, and we're filling in that gap. If we find out that you're, quote unquote, rotating the slaves, then we're going to expedite their petitions for freedom, and we're going to impose a hefty fine on you. That's 1788, 8 years after the first law. George Washington came 2 years later in 1790. So what he was doing regarding, quote unquote, rotating the slaves wasn't skirting the law. He was breaking the law. That's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's got to be told. And that's why this broad-based alliance, this President's House / Slavery Memorial Alliance, that's what we come together to do, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you want to make the argument that George Washington was a great general, go ahead and make that argument. If you want to make the argument that George Washington was a great president, go ahead and make that argument. Question I pose to people is this: can you be a great human being when you hold 316 fellow human beings in brutal bondage under slavery. So we say, tell the good, tell the bad, and tell the ugly. And that's what we're fighting to do. And if the guy in the White House wants to try to censor that, we have an army of folks who are ready to fight back. An army of folks who started fighting sometime in August. And because we organized so well here in Philadelphia, we believe that's why that September 17 deadline came and went. Because this broad-based umbrella organization we have an activist strategy, we have a political strategy, and we have a legal strategy. We are a formidable group of folks who have come together to fight the good fight. We won round one, but clearly it's not over, not even close, because technically the guy in the White House could shut down that site tomorrow. So here's the plan. We want to make sure that we continue to build up our army. And how do we build up our army? By getting people like you to join us. So we need you to join us, and we want to know what you suggest, what you believe is the best way to fight this fight. Reach out to us 24/7. Here's our email address: atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. I'm going to say it two more times: atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. I don't really need to say it again, but I will, because our producer, our engineer extraordinaire, Roland, put it right up there. Contact us at atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com and say, hey, I want to be a part of this army. Here's my suggestion. I want to be part of this army. I don't have a suggestion, but I want to stand with you shoulder to shoulder, whatever you do. Reach us at atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com and offer your support, offer your presence. Or you can give us a call. Our phone number, 215-552-8751. 215-552-8751. Again, we thank Roland for putting it up there, 215-552-8751. Leave a message and say, hey, I heard this attorney, Michael Cord, on TV Courtroom, on Philly Cam, and I'm interested in helping in any way I can. I have these skills, and I'm willing to assist you. Or I have no skills, and I just want to be a soldier standing shoulder to shoulder. Whatever you can do, join us, 215-552-8751. Let me continue by pointing out that I said there were 316 Black men, women, and children who were enslaved by George Washington, and 9 of them were held here in Philadelphia. And when you go to that site at 6th and Market, and by the way, it's an open air exhibit. You can go there 24/7, 365. At least you could until the guy in the White House took over, and at least until before the federal shutdown a couple days ago. So I'm encouraging people to go down there while it's still there. I'm encouraging people to join this umbrella organization so that we can have you as a soldier in this battle. Remember, I talked about the 316. I'm now talking about the 9 at 6th and Market. And when it comes to enslaved Black people, I want to be clear. We can't just look at them and say, oh, that was horrible. Those slaves had hell on earth. Well, again, they weren't slaves. They were enslaved human beings. They were literally human beings like you and me. They had hopes and dreams and aspirations. They also had names that they recognized for themselves. And I'm going to call them out so we know who we're talking about. I'm going to call them out because we in the African tradition, we believe in what we define as say their name, because that way they become real. Of the 9, let me break it down. Number 1, and these are the names. There's a beautiful wall that was constructed by a great Black architect, Emmanuel Kelly, who a couple years ago passed away. We made sure we had a Black architectural firm to design and put all that together. And this great wall near the Liberty Bell Center, as part of the President's House, has these 9 names in this order. Number 1, Austin, 32 years old when he was brought here by George Washington in 1790. Number 2, Christopher Shields was 16 years old. Number 3, Giles was 32 years old. Number 4, Hercules. Hercules, when brought here in 1790, was 36 years old. Number 5 is Joe Richardson. Joe Richardson, 26 years old, but he didn't arrive at the same time as the 8 others in 1790. He was brought here 5 years later in 1795, but he's still part of it. So Joe Richardson is number 5. Number 6 is Moll, Moll. Moll was, when brought here in 1790, 51 years old. And number 7 on our list of 9, Oni Judge. Oni Judge was 17 years old. I mentioned Oni Judge just now, and before that, earlier, I mentioned number 4, which is Hercules. Both Hercules and Oni Judge escaped from George Washington. Hercules did it when he left Philadelphia and was taken back to Mount Vernon, Virginia by George Washington. He escaped from Virginia. That was 36-year-old Hercules, number 4 on our list. But Oni Judge, number 7 on our list, she escaped from here in Philadelphia. At the time, Philadelphia had the largest free Black population in America. And when she was tired of being abused, she reached out to the free Black community and they got her the hell out of here. And it's a happy ending because she outlived George and Martha Washington by 50 years as a free woman. Oni Judge. Number 8 on our list is Paris. Paris, when he was brought here, was 16 years old. And finally, number 9 on our list is Richmond. Richmond was 14. And if you listen closely to the ages, we have this baby, this kid, this child, Richmond, as the youngest of the 9. And I mentioned number 6, Moll, as the oldest, 51. So from age 16 to age 14, that's the age of number 9, Richmond, from age 14 all the way up to age 51 with Moll. Those are the human beings who were enslaved by George Washington. So we have to make sure we fight the good fight for them. How do we do it? By being part of ATAC, which is part of this bigger group, this excellent group. And let me say this, folks. I wanted to make sure that we at least had a few minutes to go to a person who is important when it comes to Philadelphia politics and Black folks in Philadelphia and Black women in Philadelphia. Put all that together. Philadelphia politics, Black women, and add to that the whole legal thing. Who do you have? You have the personification of all that in the name of Keir Bradford Gray. So I'm going to stop right where I am regarding ATAC and what's going on at 6th and Market. And for the next 10 minutes, we're going to talk to Keir Bradford Gray, because something of historical importance took place today. And I could spend the next hour telling you, but I don't want to do that mansplaining thing. I'm going to turn it over to a sister. And first, Keir, tell us a little bit about yourself in the defender's office in the Marone Law Firm as the head of their civil rights litigation department, and then tell us what took place today.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, Mike, I really enjoyed talking with you. And thank you for being there. So, my name is Keir Bradford Gray, for those of you who do not know me. And my history and background is I was a lawyer that transcended into a leader in law, and then that transcended into a political candidate. And now, as the good Lord has it, I am in this fight for civil rights, working as the head of civil rights division at the Marone Law Firm, where I believe I'm supposed to be at this precise moment. But in doing that, I have learned and have met so many people and have understood some of the inner workings of our democratic process through party affiliation. And when I say through party affiliation, there's no secret I am a Democrat at this time. And I have been talking with a group of women who are Democrats who are feeling the pain of the election loss. Black women are feeling it more than anyone, any other demographic, in terms of being discriminated against by their government. This is not to negate what the immigrant population is feeling or what other people are feeling, but in terms of loyal Democratic voters who 92% of their voting bloc continuously and over time more expansively show up to vote for the Democrats, we want to understand where we fall in Democrats' purview and what value do we place or do they place on our perspective. So we kind of got together and said, you know what? We have been loyal Democrats, and I just don't see where the future of the party is going. That includes our voice, our perspective, and disperses resources to our needs, especially as it comes to voter turnout.
Let me ask this, Kieran. I'm so glad caught a couple things. I want you to explain what you meant. You said, I am a Democrat at this time. So I want to understand what that means. And how do you explain Pennsylvania, and in particular Philadelphia, dropping the ball on Madam Vice President Kamala Harris? What the hell was that about? So first, why did you say at this time? And two, we had a potential history-making candidate and drop the ball. So first, at this time, second, Madam Vice President.
Yeah. Look, I've been a Democrat since I've been registered to vote at 18 years old, and that was some time ago.
Come on now,
But
that was like what, 10 years ago, but go ahead.
you're so kind. But now, as a woman in my 50s, I am not just a blind loyalist. I am someone that is looking at what is in the best interest for myself and my family and the community in which I'm an extension of. And so to me, I'm not signaling anything at this moment, but I am saying that there are a lot of conversations about where are we most valued. And I'm not saying that we're most valued in the MAGA world or whatever, but there's a lot of talk in the communities and the circles that I come from about this independence from being in a party affiliation. And if we are to stay loyal Democrats, what is it that the Democrats are going to do to make sure that our voices are not just heard, but they are within the structure and the, I would say, the goals that are intended to increase voter turnout. And the reason we say that is because, look, there was a lot that went on during the Harris campaign where people and women of color were on the team, but they didn't seem to have much agency or authority or resources to connect with the communities that they come from and that they know need to hear some different messages than that were going on nationally. And there's a lot of things that you can do. There's a lot of credible messengers in African American women that were not used that can help get out the vote because they are credible enough. They are relatable enough. And then you had stories from staffers who were tasked with a job to bring out the votes, but were given no resources to do so. So I think when people value me, they give me agency and they give me the resources to do the thing that they're asking me to do. If you expect something of me, give me authority and the resources to get it done. And we, as Black women as a whole, were asked to do a lot with nothing. And we did our best for our communities, but there could be a lot better. And when we don't have those types of things that are going on in our Democratic Party, and we really don't know where the decisions being made and why aren't one of us at least involved in that decision tree, and I would say at least statewide. I don't know about other states, and I don't know about national, but at least for PA, what is our responsibility to say, if we lose an election, people get a cold, we caught the flu. We didn't give up 300,000+ jobs to keep doing the same thing and throwing more money at it because we seem to be bearing the brunt. So when I say right now, it just means that you can't have my loyalty forever and show me nothing in return. So we really came together to have a real strategic conversation with the new leadership of the state party, Eugene DePasquale, and I think the director, Larry, who was Josh Shapiro's chief of staff. And we really wanted to know that before you start making decisions, hey, I think we want to be at the table of the decision-making tree. And then we can really make sure that people are getting access and information and things that they need to increase voter turnout from our perspective in our communities. And maybe that will help us not catch the flu next time.
I love the way you broke that down. It's funny because I used to look at Black people with the side eye when they would say things like, well, I'm a Democrat for now, until I started saying it. And when I started saying, I'm like, oh, there's a reason why we're saying that. So I get it. I certainly understand it. And that doesn't mean we're running to the Republican Party. We're
No,
not saying that. We're just
no.
saying that we can't be taken for granted. And as much of a quote unquote loyal Democrat as I am, I'm feeling like you. I give you all this stuff. I bring all this stuff to you and I never get anything back. Never get anything back. So you got to start doing the right thing. So you mentioned the name D. Pasquale. Explain to the listening audience and the viewing audience who this person is and why you all wanted to meet with him.
Yeah. So Eugene D. Pasquale, I met him on the campaign trail. We met as competitors. We both ran for attorney general together, and Eugene has been not new to this game. He has been the auditor general, 2 times elected statewide. And so Eugene is someone who understands the political channels and political connections. But through our competition, we gained a mutual respect for each other. I was an unknown in the statewide. And Eugene really did appreciate my vantage point and what I wanted to do if I were so lucky to be elected attorney general. And he did take on some of my thoughts and perspectives and incorporated it into his platform when he was the nominee for attorney general and running in the general election against Republican Dave Sunday. And one of the things that we did do is Eugene asked me, would I join him in the Attorney General's office to make sure that we had a vantage point and perspective on how we can use those resources to truly take care of problems in the African American community that have been long forgotten and long overlooked, that office can do something about. Unfortunately, we did not win, but Eugene then became the Democratic Party chair and being nominated by all of the state committee members across the entire state pretty much unanimously. So he's got the eye, the ear of every committee member in the state of Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia and all in between. And so Eugene has a really important role right now. Eugene has to figure out where's the direction of the party in Pennsylvania going? How are we going to increase voter turnout and deliver this swing state to the people that he obviously to the Democrats because he's a Democrat? And how is he going to get that done and who is he going to use? Knowing that African American women voter turnout was 92% for
Ooh.
Democrat candidates, Kamala Harris. Knowing that although we're not saying that we are the only ones that can be used to get the Democrats over the finish line, if we do not show up, nobody wins. How are you going to value us as stakeholders? And what is it that you're willing to do to make sure that our voices and our vantage point are in the decision making as well as the outcomes of the Democratic Party? So we thought we had a ear in someone who wants to do well, who wants to succeed, and we reached out to him, and he gladly accepted the invitation to come to Philadelphia. He lives in Pittsburgh, to come to Philadelphia and sit and listen to community voices, hear their stories, and develop an awareness of deficits and gaps that he may have about the true experiences of Black women from all walks of life. And we had people from all over the state who shared their story. They were not politicians or elected officials, they were community grassroots members, people who had nothing to do with politics, but wanting to make sure that they told him that when you're speaking, I don't fear you're speaking to me, and neither do the people in my household, nor the people on my block, nor the people in my larger community.
We're listening to Kier Bradford Gray, a former defender on the county level and on the federal level, and now the Civil Rights Litigation Department head at Marone Law Firm. We've run out of time, Kier, but I'll give you 60 seconds. So if people want to support you, if they want to support this initiative, how can they contact you? How can they contact this group?
Oh, please contact me at kbgray at Marone, Marrone, law.com. And that's KB Gray with an EY, not AY. And I would say I don't have a lot that I can wrap this up in 60 seconds, but I just want to thank you, Mike, because I called you to be a documentarian of history and making sure that you recorded or things were recorded accurately and reflected accurately into what our direct asks were. We didn't get there and just tell stories for story's sake.
Mm.
We had a direct ask. And I know in these moments, we need people like yourself who have the journalistic integrity to make sure that you got the story right. So thank you.
Kier, thank you once again. Before we go, this time 10 seconds. Give us that email address. I know folks are scrambling.
Okay.
Once again.
K, B as in Bradford, Grey at maronelaw.com. And so that's KB Gray at maronelaw.com. And again, please reach out to me if you want to know more. I can give anybody else more about what we're doing because we want to build an army that is truly telling the leadership that we need more understanding and awareness. And Michael Cord, thank you all the time for being that supporter and the person that you are.
I appreciate that. And I encourage folks to reach out to Kier for two reasons. One, because she has a great initiative. And two, in a couple of years, you're going to have to go through her chief of staff in the White House or the governor's office. So you better talk to her while you can. Kier, thank you for the great work for the community and have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff from Kier Bradford Gray. Folks, I only have about maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes left. So remember, I told you at the beginning of the show that I've endorsed candidates. And here's what it comes down to. I love the Philadelphia Tribune, absolutely love the Tribune, but I no longer write for the Philadelphia Tribune. And here's why. They told me I could no longer endorse candidates in my columns that I write for the Tribune. And I love the Tribune. I would never have anything bad to say about the Tribune, but I will not be censored. I'm known as the angriest black man in America for a reason. The Tribune hired me because of who I am, and they know that I will not water it down for anybody, even the people I love, even the newspaper I love. So you will no longer see any endorsements from me in the Tribune. So I'm doing something now through what I call the Angry Black Man News. The Angry Black Man News. Right now, it's on my social media pages, but we're going to put together a website and we're going to put together a podcast. So the endorsements that you will not read about in the Tribune, I'm going to share them with you right now. And I encourage you to check out my radio show, The Radio Courtroom, on WURD 96.1 FM, because they still allow me to do my endorsements. Let me do this in 2 minutes. It goes like this. District Attorney Larry Krasner. More important than anything are the 3 Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices seeking retention. Christine Donahue, vote yes. Kevin Doherty, vote yes. David Wetch, vote yes. And then we get to Superior Court retention. Alice Beck Dubow, vote yes. We have someone running to become a Superior Court judge. That's Brandon Newman. Elect Brandon Newman. On the Commonwealth Court, Michael Wojcik is seeking retention. Vote yes. On the Commonwealth Court election, Stella Sy is seeking to be elected. Vote for Stella Sy. I'm going to run through this very quickly. Common Pleas Court retention. Gwendolyn Bright, Ann Butchart, Scott DeClaudio, Michael Fanning, Dane Gray, Christopher Malios, Walter Ozalewski, Frank Palumbo, Rainey, Tracy Roman, Stephanie Sawyer, Susan Shulman. All of them, yes. But when it comes to Lyris Young, vote no. If you want to know why, this person as a judge, absolutely horrible. Vote no on Lyris Young. Vote no on Lyris Young. Vote yes for the rest of them. And then we get to folks seeking to become Common Pleas Court judges. There's Will Braveman, Sarah Jones, Deborah Watson Stokes, Kia Gee, Irina Ehrlich, Larry Farnese, Leon King, Brian Kizalewski, and Anthony Stefanski, and Joseph Russo, and finally Jennifer Santiago. There's folks running for other positions. We don't have enough time. Contact me at michaelcordx@gmail.com. michaelcordx@gmail.com, or check me out on WURD 96.1 FM every Saturday from 1 to 3. I'm going to end today's show like I end every show. It goes like this. Think Black. I'm out.